Well, hello, hello. Hey guys, how are you? Nothing there for a moment. Doing pretty good. Nice, that's awesome. So hello everyone. Thank you for joining us this week for Fireside Chat. My name is Sylvia, aka Crypto Empress, and Steadystate welcomes you all. Today we talk about the risks you should know about within DeFi and how to not get wrecked. With our speakers, Jonathan Libby, who is still the founder and CEO of Steadystate. As always, Akash Mahendra, who is the head of strategy and operations at Steadystate, and our special guest, Jasmine Bronson, who is the head of engineer at Steadystate. Any questions you guys have during the presentation of the speakers, you can write them to the stream chat, and I will forward them to our speakers. And also, please remember, we are not financial advisors and nothing we say should be taken as such. This is for entertainment purposes only. So usually we start with the recent news in DeFi related to hacks and exploits. However, as much as I tried to find this sort of news from last week, there seemed to be none that happened. But if you guys have come across some other news or information, then you can let us know, because I didn't find anything that happened last week. However, I did find one article that I thought I would ask your opinions on this. Massive gains are being made in DeFi. But at the same time, DeFi investors are also losing money because from a traditional finance point of view, DeFi is not regulated, moderated, intermediated, hosted, or validated by a central authority, only driven by smart contracts. So if a smart contract fails or is attacked, consumers have no remedy. Regulators protect consumers and investors. In DeFi, you don't have any intermediaries to regulate, so it's totally P2P. So my question would be, what are your thoughts on how it will be regulated in the future?
I can start here. So I think we're starting to see what regulation is going to be looking like already, just on different subpoenas and actions that have been taking place by SEC. A lot of people are going to want to try to regulate DeFi similar to how we regulate or understand normal finance, and in some ways it can be, but one of the biggest problems is, again, the point of DeFi long term is to be run by anonymous communities, a system run on decentralized code built by communities of people where anyone can join and participate, no matter who you are, where you're from, what you look like, or anything. And so the value of that is you can no longer you're only judged by your work ethic and how you perform. But the key problem there that evolves is then if you don't know who's using the system, you just know people are participating. Then if you can't figure that out, then how do you control them? And how do you control who's participating? And what we're seeing is people are trying, rather than trying to control who's participating, what they're looking to do is go after projects that have basically anything they own, because they can't take out this decentralized code system and anything they own and try to take them out there. Because what I think what's going to happen is bottlenecks are things that are the things holding back more output from anything. And a lot of times, say if I want to access Uniswap, I need to go to the Uniswap website to go access the Uniswap decentralized code system. So I think what happens is people are going to start regulating how the bottlenecks work and who can go through the bottlenecks. DYDX was a great example where if you had a wallet that was or an IP that was attached to a U.S. entity while accessing DYDX, you were not allowed to get the airdrop. And so they're probably going to be starting putting limiters on these like centralized entities right here that allow you to that's really what bottleneck to enter the decentralized codes and start controlling who can use what from those. And I think that's the way we're going to start seeing regulation is people who build the models, who allow people to enter, or who control they're going to try to be forced to control the interest because you can't control the decentralized system.
Yeah, like it's interesting because DeFi is still at such an early stage, but even at this early stage, it's such a fragmented and like a diverse market, right? And it is a pretty hectic task for regulators to try and figure out who to regulate and what is there to regulate. Like you can't really regulate code, as John said. So from like a regulatory standpoint, the challenge as a market even grows further and further. The challenge that the regulators face is that it doesn't really fit inside the practical and regulatory model, which is used for the common financial transactions right now. So they have to create something new, and there's also a lot of friction between the SEC, which is obviously the main regulator, but also then the Federal Reserve Board's getting involved. The Commodities Future Trading Commission is also trying to regulate that part. So it's all very confusing, and you do see like it affects the markets. It affects people's livelihoods in Texas, where we're based, because they keep trying to change the laws over there as well. So it is frustrating from our endpoint, and I think the faster we try and clear these things up, the better for not only the entire industry, but also just like each country in the future as well, because and then the technology moving forward.
For sure. To add to that, Cash, I was just thinking about the fact that regulation is one of the top headwinds when it comes to the cryptocurrency and DeFi space. And because it's so early, we have a lot of gray area. And so just to add on, like it's hard for you to kind of figure out if you're going to tax a swap or which events are actually taxable, right? And when it comes down to the regulatory aspect as well, XRP is still in a chess match with the SEC. And so it's a lot to think about, especially when it pertains to like open source code. You can't touch that. But what these government entities can try to do is say that these DeFi protocols are in fact quote unquote securities, and that in itself, like what's happening with XRP, that's a long-standing chess match. That's literally going to set the tone for the rest of the cryptocurrency and DeFi community. So it's very interesting to see what happens in the next few years. Do I think regulation is going to happen? I think it's going to happen, but is it going to happen correctly? Is it going to happen in the way that it benefits crypto users or that it benefits the government? It's a lot of gray area.
Yeah, and I actually think it's not a bad thing if some of the space gets regulated, because that way we can really move forward, encourage like the mom and dad investors to get involved, and the more conservative kind of people who wouldn't normally ape into DeFi or be like be a DeFi degen get involved in this kind of space, which is something I'm looking forward to. But the current approach is still based on how they regulate centralized intermediaries, which doesn't actually work for these DeFi digital assets such as wallets and dexes and bridges and all this sort of stuff. So this is where the main issue is right now, and I think it might be a while before we get it right.
Yeah, and I definitely agree. Like some regulations are definitely needed, but there's like this huge like risk of like over-regulating. Because what I see, for example, like I'm in Estonian Cryptocurrency Association, and we work a lot with like Estonian governments, and like they are now trying to regulate, and they get their like things that they have to do from like Europe part of the world. So it's kind of like what I see where it's going is a bit more like way too much over-regulation, because they tend to say like, crypto and DeFi is all about, money laundering and terrorism. So that's why we have to secure you all for secure investments and so on. So I really hope that they find like this middle balance there and try like use the traditional finance part, but also like bring in new ideas and new ways to regulate this all.
Sylvia, you're muted.
I'm sorry. I sometimes forget because my dog is here. I can make noise, so I for security always mute. Anyway, by now we all have understood that the DeFi market is a risky business, but thankfully there are many projects and companies who are trying to manage these risks. Let's take, for example, Rock Doctor, which mission is to screen for hard rock code that results in 100% theft of all underlying funds for all participants. This is the one part of the due diligence process that most people kind of simply do on their own, as it costs thousands of dollars to hire a senior Solidity developer to look over a farm for safety. Rug Doctor labels projects with different levels. For example, high risk is a project which contains code or practices that are highly likely to lead to catastrophic losses as they are right now. They say to make sure read the description carefully, as they will always warn what these issues are. If you see the word hard rock anywhere in the review, stay far away. Sounds pretty good, right? However, they also reserve the right to not review exceedingly complex projects that would require tens of thousands of dollars of senior security analyst man hours. Also, they have willing members of staff to manually verify identities and verify contract ownership. And lastly, their disclaimer says that this is done with their best knowledge and effort. Nothing can be known for certain. Always do your own risks, do your own research and risk management. All of this raises questions regarding the efficiency of this solution, and it seems like there isn't actually no way to accurately rate risk. What is your opinion on this, guys?
I personally use RugDog all the time. That's probably the best website or database out there for what's a good farm, or especially the new ones which come up. It's actually very useful information for someone like myself who likes to get into new farms early, and it does a good job in specifying the basic risk, which is like is this contract, can the owner of this contract mint unlimited amount of tokens, or or the can this can the owner of the contract remove your funds without by itself? So it does cover the major concerns. But I would love to that's obviously different to what we're building, but it does a good job for what it is now. And they have weekly podcasts, and they discuss information on what makes a good farm and what makes good safety. So it has definitely has some value right now, and it's gained a lot of traction. But I'm sure Jasmine and John can have more of a discussion on what we're building and how it's going to be much superior to what's on the market right now.
For sure. So just to touch on the R.A.D, the risk analysis database. So different from like RugDoc and all our other competitors, we're looking at something that's more niche in the fact that we're looking at the exploits that happen that are very big and that will be valuable for our retail investors and our investors who actually have institutions. And so when you check out all the other competitors, we're looking at, as granular as on-chain data, stuff like that. We have all the data because of our partnerships. And so when I say that we're looking at niche exploits, we're looking at the exploits that happen that touch all of the DeFi community, like what recently happened with Poly Network, Cream Finance, V Finance. These are things that from retail investors and the institutional investors mindset that is very important, it's very imperative. And so with R.A.D, we have everything as far as like hashes, like transaction hashes, hacker hashes. So we can, if we needed to do some analysis on why this hack happened or how it happened, then we could just use those hashes into like Etherscan or something like that. So what Steadystate does is very niche to the DeFi community, and I think that's what's going to separate us from our competitors. From a retail investor's point of view, you may not have that much money to risk, right? But you still want to make sure you're making the right decisions when it comes to making investments in the DeFi space. It's very easy to get rug pulled. It's very easy to be a victim of a smart contract exploit if you don't know much about the space. And even folks who do, they can still get rug pulled because the space is it's so volatile. Anything can happen anywhere, right? And so what we're trying to do is not necessarily quote unquote ensure that you mitigate risk, but ensure that you actually understand what's out there, what can happen. Everything from rebase errors, smart contract exploits, splash loan attacks. All this is literally a playground to get to get exploited compared to just investing in Bitcoin, right? And so we want to make sure when people get into this space, they understand what's out there. We have Steadystate has its own taxonomy where we define what type of exploits there are, and then also another thing that people don't understand is these protocols such as like Uniswap and stuff like that. You might think our competitors might think that they're more susceptible to be hacked than this and the other. It's not the case. It's the coins and these tokens, these altcoins that are built off of those protocols that are more likely to be exploited. So we have to think about this when we're considering risk.
Yeah. When it comes to calculating risk, when it comes to how you calculate it, I think we have some pretty brilliant people like Jasmine and others working and leading this section. There's no proper way necessarily in the space right now to understand the risk like at a deep level, like in the sense where like you can create an in-depth analysis and know it's are correct. There has to be some kind of some of the assessments you have to make are arbitrary. One of the great things Jasmine's doing is we have a lot of people believe like when you look at risk analysis, they look at because there are so many hacks. Because there's so many hacks and there's a limited amount, it's hard to calculate a risk likeliness. First, one thing I want to say is there are models that have been built for that specific problem in actuarial science, expected losses, and then moving to another system called chain loss. But we can go over that later. But what's really important is something Jasmine's doing that's very key is even though there's a finite amount of rows, let's say, of available hacks happen, there are a lot of different columns, let's say, different things you can be checking or looking at when an event happens and looking for relationship modeling. And that's what she's doing, where you can start seeing when these things move, when things happen, the likeliness happens, or when you can expect a higher risk ratio of an event happening based on these different moving averages, whether it's in the protocol, in like the industry, and in DeFi as a whole, and crypto market. Like there's a lot to be looking at. And so rather than you have a finite amount of columns of hacks you can look at, you got to increase finite amount of rows and hacks. You got to increase the columns and what you'll be looking for when a hack happens or after it's happened to identify and categorize. And that's some of the great work she's working on internally on our side. It's very, very exciting.
And just to add, someone asked, how long have I been building out? So the R.A.D has been built out prior to me being hired as the head database engineer. Now that is in my hands, I've just been adding more of the exploits here manually. So that's a great question, but I got on board around June. So just to also add, when we think about risk in DeFi as well, it's very, very important to sit down and do your research. And I know that's something that you can just simply tell anybody, in crypto, do your own research, But like, that is one of the first things you should do prior to getting into the cryptocurrency space in general, because prior to the inception of DeFi, we still have risk in crypto. I mean, anything from like ICO scams, you had fake hacks, fake wallets, Ponzi schemes. It's a plethora of spoof ICOs. There's a plethora of hacks that have already, hacks or exploits that have already been created prior to DeFi's inception. So that's why I think another layer prior to using things like rugdoc and like even here at Steadystate using R.A.D. It's very important to have your own layer of research and then go and use these utilities that are out there.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And you also answered my next question about the R.A.D. But I also know that the goal is like creating machine learning based system. So maybe you can like kind of maybe explain how this works exactly. Like what is the purpose of this machine learning based?
Yes. So another thing that sets us away from our competitors as well is the machine learning aspect to this. And so it's very important to understand, like, when we talk about ML and DeFi, this is something that's new and growing, right? And ML and AI in DeFi, when it comes to risk, is perfect. It's literally the best combination that you can add in a tech space. And the reason why is we can analyze risk by understanding how these protocols interact, or how these protocols say like act on their social media pages, or what happens on chain prior to a rug pull or a smart contract exploit or a flash loan attack. There are behaviors that occur. And so with machine learning, we can understand, okay, we can create an activation function that if this protocol does this, then that activation function gives 1, signaling that something is about to occur. And then we can, like, with our risk, with our risk metric, we can let our users know, hey, this protocol might undergo something. Rather, in another debate to this could be, well, what if something actually doesn't happen? What if this steady state metric didn't call it correctly? I'd rather alert somebody and nothing else happened than not alert somebody and then something happened. And that's where DeFi insurance is very, very important. And there's a need in this space because DeFi, under the entire crypto umbrella, is one of the riskiest places you can lose money. Mark Cuban had to learn it the hard way, right? So there's a lot of people that on the retail side, on the institution side, that can benefit from our product. So that's a very good question, Sylvia. I'm very passionate about just building this thing out and, collaborating with the other devs. We have people coming on board from the machine learning, the quant space, physics, all that our development team is building, and it's growing. And I'm very excited to see all of this happen. So
I had to laugh about the Mark Cuban thing. I still can't get over that. He put it in his blog, and 2 days later, the Iron Finance just, it didn't have an exploit, but it did kind of an exploit. Yeah, it completely crashed. That was just poor timing. Oh gosh. But yeah, no, as a DeFi user and someone who accesses new tech like every day kind of thing, I'm really keen. There's so much disparity of standard information in the DeFi landscape. So I want like a one-stop shop for all this information. I want the risk ratings all ready for me to go. So it's very exciting. I'm hoping sooner the better, but yeah, these things take time to build, and it'll definitely be worth the wait. Like I'm sure Jasmine, John, and the development team will be super professional product once it's done.
Yeah, for sure. And just to incentivize the people who are watching live, thank you for watching live and hearing more about our database. I just wanted to give some statistics based on what we've already discovered. So in terms of what's already in the R.A.D, we found that smart contract exploits are the #1 exploit when it comes to the DeFi space. Right after that, we have ICO scams. And then after that, flash loan hacks, rug pulls, and then private key compromises. So when we talk about smart contract exploits, that's as granular and as common as you can get when it comes to exploits in this space, because hackers, they get very clever, very astute, and they say, okay, we're going to understand how this smart contract works, and then we're going to figure out how can we pull money from this. And with Poly Network, it was just even though it was one of the biggest DeFi exploits that have ever happened, literally happening this year, it's very interesting to understand the psychology behind these hackers. Like the guy or the person, whoever they are, this hacker decided to, as a joke, take $611 million and then give a percentage of that back, saying, I just did it just to show that I could do it. This is the main reason why risk and DeFi insurance is so important. There's hackers out there that literally do this for fun. They're just brilliant enough to just do it for fun. So with that being said, after that, ICO scams have been here since the beginning of crypto, since the beginning of Bitcoin. I mean, we've had even in our steady state taxonomy, we have examples of what an ICO scam is, an example of one of the famous ones that have happened during the inception of Bitcoin. But ICO scams, very easy to get so gung-ho about a project that doesn't actually have something tangible, something that's actually going to happen. There's a lot of people that will get together, create some type of altcoin, and then say it's the next big thing, take investor money, and then that's a rug pull right there. Just take that money off of the under the investors' noses and go. So like I said, R.A.D, we're making great insights on statistical analysis. We're making good insights on understanding the behavior of these protocols and what are some of these tokens that come up. And one last thing, Binance Smart Chain, same thing with that. We're doing a lot of analysis on that because with Binance Smart Chain, you can literally wake up to tomorrow and make a coin and then get your friends together and pump that coin and dump it. And some people, external investors that didn't know it was an inside job, can get burned, can get wrecked easily. So these things happen, they occur. And so, yes, great questions, guys.
And very good answer. I feel like I like so much good information. I could just listen to you for hours. So thank you for this explanation. Really good. So we've talked about risks, different risks in DeFi as well. But what do you think, guys? Is the attention on risk one of the biggest problems of DeFi?
So there is, I don't think there is enough attention to risk. Is that the question, Sylvia? Like, I mean, people are building a lot in DeFi. Like, obviously, every day there's new protocols, there's new ideas out there, and without thinking things properly, I mean, that's the whole fun, right? The innovative style DeFi's. Without thinking things properly, people put the code in action, and millions and maybe sometimes even billions of dollars go into random protocols. And sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. So, in my view, there isn't enough attention to risk in DeFi, or insurance for that matter, as we've discussed earlier. So. That's the main. I mean, that's one of the main concerns, which is preventing the space from growing. Because, as Jasmine said, there's a 660 million hack. I mean, that's just not that kind of stuff doesn't sit comfortably with the institutional investors. That doesn't sit comfortably with the mom and dad investors, or just the average person. Because these are the kind of things which make headlines. And every time like XYZ happened in DeFi, people are like, oh, this is like a joke system, right? So, and it's not protected. People lost money. So yeah, I don't think there is enough attention to risks and the effects it has on the entire ecosystem.
I think the question was exactly like you kind of put it, that like the headlines make it to like, oh, hack here and exploit there, and so like normal mom and dad and grandpa will see only this, so it's like, oh my god, so many risks, and like I can't put my money. So the attention on risk, like, is it a problem?
And things which go wrong with DeFi do resonate to the average person who isn't already involved. Like, sometimes I do get links to random articles from family friends who aren't involved in the space at all. And it's always negative ones. It's like, oh, XYZ happened, this exploit happened, this exchange got hacked. You don't ever hear the good stuff which is happening in DeFi from them, because that's not usually newsworthy. Like, hey, we're not gonna hear. I'm not gonna get a message from them tomorrow saying, cool, West Ham's partnered with Yield App, because that's a cool thing happening. Like CeFi DeFi hybrid coming, linking up things with New World. That's not going to happen. But if there's a big hack with a centralized exchange in their country, which happened, they're like, oh look, this is crypto. There's everything wrong with it. So everything does have its effect, and the earlier and the more we prevent risk, the better we will be with the space. Like, we all of us here in this chat, and probably everyone listening is already involved in DeFi. So these things, exploits, hacks, and other issues aren't going to change their mind on the future of the industry. But it's more about getting people from the outside to come in and get involved in the space, which is essentially the goal here, right? Like, we want to make this DeFi and CeFi and thing mainstream. And yeah, it will have issues until we solve some of these problems.
Yeah, and just to add to Cash, like you said, when we hear about DeFi, or like on the media platforms and stuff like that, we're always hearing bad stuff. We're always hearing things that pertain to a loss here and a loss there. When in actuality, I mean, there are some good things that come out of this space. There are a lot of good things that come out of this space. As as simple and as primitive of understanding the Zen of why Bitcoin even exists, and Bitcoin being an extension to the DeFi space. Self-sovereignty, financial sovereignty. And unfortunately, a lot of people who are looking at these media outlets, they're looking at crypto and DeFi as this thing, this place where it's a black hole, and all you can do is lose money, and but in actuality, this is more than just that. And so that's another reason why it's very important platforms like us to get out there and basically debunk all that wrong information that's out there about the DeFi space. Yes, it's risky, but just about any financial system is risky. It's risky to put your money into fiat and expect returns when we have inflation rate. Even this year, our inflation rate was about 4.2%, and the rate in which people got more money or got a salary increase is about 3%. So essentially, like, we are losing money each year. So it's very important for us to debunk all this false information out there.
Yep, very true. We lost John again. But I will ask here, Jasmine, a question for you from one of our viewers, Katarina Lilleke, is asking, like, Jasmine, is R.A.D basically 5-0 on chain?
Is RAD 5 to 0 on chain?
5 to 0. I think you see the question as well. Maybe you get what they are asking.
I'm not understanding the question. Can you ask them to rephrase it? I can't see the question. But is that a rate?
5-0. You mean 5-0 maybe? Oh, so is the RAD basically 5-0 on chain? So like the police of chain. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to answer that question. Yeah, if you could rephrase that, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah.
Our RAD database currently is remote. I hope this helps, but it is remote, and we're moving it right now. We're in a transfer stage to PostgreSQL, and just to add on to that as well, the reason why we're doing this this move and everything like that is because we have a partnership with Chainlink. So that's another thing that I wanted to talk about today. Chainlink node integration, that right there is going to take our RAD database to the next level. We are beyond the world of manually entering data. We are in the world of automation. And so Chainlink node integration allows us to automate our data entry process, and then as well as getting that on-chain data as well. So if we have an exploit that's very big, everybody's losing their mind about it, we can get as granular as getting on the on-chain data with some of our partnerships, other than just Chainlink, some of our partnerships, and then looking at, okay, what are some things that happen? What are some things that occurred? And how can we apply this to future exploits? So if that person can reinstate their question, I'm happy to ask, but I hope that helped as well.
So they keep saying that 5 is American for police. So is that like a police on the chain?
Oh no, absolutely not. This is not what we do at Steadystate. We're a commercial company. We're not acting like a cyber trace or like some type of company that is, like working with the police or some type of institution. That's not what we do. We're storing data. Oh, like police on chain. No, absolutely not. Absolutely not police. We give you the information that happens. If you want to call the police and tell them what happened to you, that's up to you. I'm just joking. But no, like we don't work as a third party that kind of goes after the hacker. If that's what that person's asking, that's not what we do at Steadystate. Not at all. Okay, that's where 5-0 came from. I was very confused.
But in the long term, RAD will split off from Steadystate's core and be open source to increase efficiency and usage. How will other smart contracts or protocols might use RAD?
Yeah, so because it's open source, just about anybody from protocol to retail investor can use Steadystate. What we're looking at is if protocols see value in us to the point where they partner with us, then that's even better because we have more streamlined access to how they do things and how their open source code works to make the RAD and our platform better. So just about anybody can use it. It's open source. We have documentation. So there'll be people who might not like come from a coding background who need to understand some of the things that we talk about. We have that there so that people can understand it. So just about anybody can use it as open source, and that's the beautiful thing about this space and the tech space in general. When we have open source code, about anybody can use it, and that's how we're doing it.
Really got into my ears that people who don't know about code can use it, because that's really cool, because I personally don't know how to code, and well, this part has always been like, so that is really awesome. Looking really forward to seeing all that like being out there implemented. But commonly big projects or protocols go through audits to make sure their protocols are strong enough to withstand attacks. However, oftentimes that still does not give it 100% certification. And if a rug pull happens, how does it get caught? What do you think? Hello, Jonathan. So we had a question: how, if rug pull happens, how do they even get caught?
So if a rug pull occurs, then we have and this is a mainstream idea. If a rug pull occurs and we alluded to this, there'll be an alert. There'll be some type of alert that notifies our investors like, hey, this is happening or this happened, right? And so in terms of them getting caught, like the protocol getting caught and stuff like that, just like in the general DeFi space that has been happening, we know, like we get to know the names, or hopefully we get to know the names of those individuals who created that project and rug pulled, if we're lucky. But we always have the public keys to always date back, you know, to the person, the anonymous people who were behind this project, and we can understand like what's their behavior in the future and stuff like that. So just to go back to that other person's question about, are we like Steadystate R.A.D database? Are we the police in some aspects? No, we're not. We are the people who actually analyze what's happening and then let you know as an investor, as a retail investor, as an institutional investor, this is what's happening. This is what potentially might happen. You make the best decision for yourself.
So Steadystate will like not take any, let's say, extra steps, like you identify, okay, this is happening, someone is doing like this and this and that. So the customer or like the investor knows what steps to take, but like as it comes for the hacker, like, is this something that the authorities will then deal with or look into it, or is this something that Steadystate will?
That's something, so that's a good question. That's something authorities can use to understand it, but like for what we do, it's mainly commercial. Our main investor, our main stakeholder are the people who are retail investors and institutional investors. We're not the on-chain police, not at all. John, you could probably speak to this as well.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to analyze data, and our job is always, you know, the long-term goal is to find events and alert people that they're happening. But we're always analyzing risk after they happen, assessment, and then we kind of expand from those two ends and go into figuring out what's going on. It's a good model. I know my plan is to build, you know, this database will be open source, and we'll build a decentralized team that'll manage and run it long term. It's kind of the vision. And so ideally people will be alerting, building new partnerships and new protocols constantly in this ecosystem, and will using other database sources to build ours out as well to make sure it's for the whole community. I think that's like, it's all very, but we're not a police. We're analyzers. We're just nerds, and we're just going to keep being nerds. And yeah, that's kind of our goal. And our goal is protection, in the sense we're not going to, it's like a rug pull. If they're anon, then it's very hard to figure out where the heck that money went. If you can't whitelist a wallet, then you can't figure out where the money went. But we can tell you the likeliness of that event happening based on anon risk and the wallets being moved to transaction. We can figure that out. We can track where the money went. But it's a very complex problem to solve. But we're doing our best at it at all times.
That's great. Thank you. And our viewers also have asked questions. Some of those got answered. We also have one last question from Trading Knowledge, who asks, how many lines of code does R.A.D have, and how many will the end product have?
So what they're alluding to is what we're doing on the ML side. So that's requiring us, like, our code base. But the R.A.D itself is just a database of records. Yeah. So I answer both. So we have over 1,000 lines of code between the index pools and then also the machine learning aspect for the R.A.D. And we also have a statistical analysis document in a Jupyter notebook that has over 100 lines of code. Just to add this tidbit as well, it's not necessarily the lines of code that's important, it's how the product is built out. But that is a great question. Now, to add on to the R.A.D part, we have over 500 exploits in our R.A.D database. dating back all the way to 2017, which is, kind of like the pivotal point in which DeFi became bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's scaled tremendously since then. So that's a great question, but we're still coding, we're still building an excellent team. We have a lot of people that are looking at what we're doing and saying this is definitely something that I can utilize. So yeah, great questions.
Thank you, Jasmine. And also a question from Sober Music TLN. Are you guys going to rent out R.A.D to other protocols?
I'll take it. So I'm still redesigning the governance model. I think everyone's gonna be really excited when we can start releasing that out. Ideally there will be a data and risk analyst team. They'll be compiling the data, and if they're compiling the data and then using it and they're building products to be used, they have every right to go buy and start selling that. Jasmine's very active about trying to find customer discovery on this project, and there's going to be a lot. How data often works is data is very raw, it's very gross, and it's just like there. And the people that take the data and they make an output out of it, or they can produce some kind of an analysis, usually can create a product that people want. I think the best data source in finance we could ever find, and the best example, is the Bloomberg computer. Basically, Michael Bloomberg, some billionaire, bad boy, whatever. But he built the internet before the internet existed for finance nerds, and it was collected all the financial data and started creating outputs where people could look up anything and everything on financial outputs. If you take data and you can start creating any kind of output from the data, and they're collecting the data and they're building it, they can build their own products that will profit off themselves, and they can build off that. In Steadystate, we're going to build a community, and rather than take their money, we're just going to be there to support them. And because inevitably the database is the number one client for the database is as a part of Steadystate community. But Steadystate, in my opinion, in some way we're building it, and we're building it, but in other ways we're a client to this community and this team, and we're going to be the first client. And after you build a product for us, I guarantee you, if you start building a decentralized community, start outputting products and keep aggregating data, they'll start creating products that everyone can use, and they can build their own money inflows. So likely it'll be outsourced, ideally, and that'll be the job of the DAO community who runs that under the Steadystate umbrella to figure out what they want to do. And the goal is to make sure that they, first of all, that we are the client, we get taken care of a Steadystate, even though we're building it. As the community builds out, say Jasmine becomes the lead DJ in this Jasmine database team down the road, that's totally decentralized. She'll have the right, say, or other people, she'll have the right to go off and build her own products and post them out to make money. And our job is just to basically function as a client long term. And that's kind of my view on the database is it's under the Steadystate umbrella, but we have specific needs from that. But the data has much more needs than that. And so the goal is whatever they want to do with it, they can do with it. And the goal is to be decentralized. If an analyst builds a model and it's approved by the engineers and they want to go out and output it, they receive the money from it. They'll receive the office. We want to build a massive passive income monster based on the work you produce. And with Steadystate, and it's going to be really fun.
That's awesome. But we have more questions coming from our viewers. Let's see. Sober Music TLN asks now, project failure in some sense or failure because of a third party. Okay. So is there a plan B, so to say, in case of a failure?
So there's a couple questions. Are there risks for Steadystate to take account with R.A.D? Yeah, our analysis is wrong. But our goal is to keep improving the analysis and make sure our analysis is suggestive rather than implicit in the sense where this is what we have to deal with. So a risk analysis on the risk you're taking on by staking money in an index pool and accumulating, we're going to say the return you should be getting is this amount. Okay. But if the protocol decides to pay a higher amount of tokens or less, we tell you, we think you should be making this amount of money perception on a token, but protocols, that's what Jazz is. She's creating suggestive analysis on the returns, and protocols can pay whatever premium they want to incentivize capital. And, that's kind of what we're trying to do as a R.A.D is meant to be a suggestive model that helps us understand what's going on and help to make sure we do as best as we can to educate users in our system and for protocols and everyone else. And say that's kind of the use of the R.A.D. So the goal is to keep it evolving constantly and keep making better educative guesses, can make ourselves a safe community, getting the best return for the risk we're taking on. Sorry, I just want to get that question answered.
Sure, thank you. And so we answered all the questions, I think, now, yes. So I think that's about it. So many thanks to you guys, Jonathan, Akas, and Jasmine, for joining us today and giving us this throughout overview of the R.A.D. Something definitely where at least I am super excited to see how it works, and also, yeah. And before you go, thank you everyone who tuned in as well. But before you go, we want to invite you to take part in Steadystate Ambassador Program. So we are looking for crypto-minded people who will share with the world what Steadystate is building. So Steadystate's ambassadors' main tasks are posting in different social media channels like Twitter, Telegram, Reddit, blogs, Quora, and YouTube. And if you want to know more about the ambassador program, either direct message me on Discord or Telegram, and I'll tell you more about it. Until then, see you guys on next week.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Sylvia.
Bye. That was a great discussion. I really liked it. Thank you, Jasmine.